Mounce, BBG, chapter 18, sentence 6. Starts with a chi, so you might think about, how you want to play with that. It's not, you always remember it's not necessarily and, it could be even or also. But we'll think about that and move on. You not only see you have a verb here, but hopefully you see that it has that third plural. Remember my side tie, metha, est, the end tie, or the verbal endings that we're working on now as we're looking at the passive. Then you got to think about, okay, is it deponent or is it just a regular verb, and that this is really a passive. Hopefully you recognize the lexical word as sunago, which is I gather together or I invite. So could be, either of those two. You kind of want to think about how you want to play it based on the rest of the sentence. So main thing to notice here, though, is that it is passive and it's third plural. So third plural is going to go really well with your subject because you want that plural subject for subject verb agreement. That's what you have. So it's the apostles are gathered together or are invited, and I'd probably go with are gathered together. So the apostles are gathered together. And in this particular instance, you remember we talked about the historical present. You notice everything after that, told, did, taught, all those are pasts. And for some strange reason, you have this verb at the very beginning that's actually a present passive. So what I would say is that this is a case where you can assume it's a historical present, and if you were to translate it as a past, that's fine, as long as you make it a passive, because that's really what the focus is here. So if you wanted to say something like, and the apostles were gathered together to Jesus, that's fine. But again, whether it's are gathered together or were gathered together, that's not as big a deal to me as you understanding that that's a passive ending and that it's third plural. Okay, and it's technically it's a present from sunago. All right, so when the apostles were gathered together to Jesus, and if I were to ask why Tanya soon is in the accusative, hopefully you know by now that the answer is not because it's direct object, but because it is the object of the preposition pros. Okay, so that is your correct answer. And they told, of course. All right. Here's your trick, and hopefully you remember this collocation rule, that verbs of communication and verbs of cognition, communication and cognition verbs, often take their direct object in the dative. If you look at the verb that precedes auto is in the dative, but you don't want to say they told to him, because that would be incorrect, because the fact is that they told, and that's a communication verb. So like I said, quite often what you have is this communication verb followed by a direct object that's in the dative, and that is what you have here. So the correct translation is, and they told him everything, right? And or all things or everything. I don't care which way you play with that, because all things or everything are equivalent to me. So I'm not concerned. But the bottom line is you need to know that that's a neuter plural. And that's really the trick there. And then whether it's a nominative or accusative, but they told him everything. That's what they told him. So it's in this particular instance, it's going to be accusative. So moving on from there, hasa from hasas, as much as or as great as or whatever. So in this case, as much as, and then he gives you the verb as much as they did, and as much as they taught, and he gives you that as well. So hopefully that fits together for you. And again, whether you treat this as a present or a past tense verb, the main thing is you translate it passively. I'll go ahead and translate it like the rest of the sentence. And the apostles were gathered together to Jesus, and they told him everything, comma. I would probably go with a comma there, as much as they did and as much as they taught.